All right, good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. Should be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, to the right of the video if you are on a larger screen. We'll go ahead and get started here. So we'll start here with Steve H says, I have read low and slow for takeaway. Did that yesterday and was hitting the ball very clean, but pretty noticeable fade. Your thoughts? So if you're fading the ball, it just means that the face is a little bit open at impact. That's the face is open to the path that you're hitting it, or it could be that you're hitting it off the heel. But it sounds like from what you said, you're hitting it solidly, or clean. I would assume that kind of means more solidly. So I'd imagine you're probably not hitting it off the heel. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't feel very clean when you hit it. So your face is probably just a little bit open. So there's two ways that you can get the face more closed to get rid of the fade. One would be strengthening the grip. That's really the easiest thing to do, is to strengthen the grip. So that would be getting your lead hand to be more on top of the grip, your trail hand to be more under, right? So this would be strengthening the grip. If I turn my hands this way on the grip, that's weak, right? So if I keep the face square, my hands are like this on the grip, that's weak. If I keep the face square and I put my hands like this is strong, right? So if you just turn your hands a little bit, keep the face square, and then have the hands oriented a little bit stronger on the grip, that should help you to get the club face more closed and straighten out that, or even turn that fade into a nice, powerful draw. The other option, let's say that you just really love your grip, you don't want to strengthen your grip, you like where it is, then the other option would be to strengthen your wrist angle. So what that means is moving your wrist away, moving your wrist toward your lead wrist, toward flexion, toward bowing, right? Doesn't mean you have to bow your wrist. It just means you need to work it in that direction, right? So if you imagine if I have my wrist like this, look at the club face, right? If I move my wrist toward flexion or toward bowing, it's not bowed. You can see it's still a little bit cupped, but that closed the face a little bit. If I continue to do so, I flatten my wrist, it gets more closed. I bow it, it gets more closed. So moving your wrist toward bowing, your lead wrist toward bowing, will help you to get that club face more closed, right? So a good feeling for this, or one thing that I like players to feel if they're leaving that club face open, is to really feel like you're taking the emblem of your glove. So if you're wearing a glove on your lead hand, and you're turning that down toward the ground as you're coming into impact. So you're coming in like this, right? As opposed to this, right? You're coming in and you're really feeling like you're getting that emblem of the glove pointing down toward the ground. The reason why I like this is because it helps to close that club face while also not making you flip, right? So if I were to tell you to roll your hands through contact, roll the face over more, a lot of times that will lead to people kind of flipping their hands. But if I tell you to get the emblem of the glove or the back of your lead hand pointing down toward the ground through contact, well, now look at that club face. That club face is more closed, and I'm keeping my shaft lean on there, so that way I'm getting some good compression. So those would be the two things that I'd be looking at to get rid of that fade, if you're not wanting to have a fade anyway. So James M says, could you show the hands wrist action just before, through, and after impact? Thanks. Yeah, I can show you something generally. It can be a little bit different from player to player. A lot of it depends on the face orientation as you're coming down into impact, because you can have more of a release where the hands more roll over, right? And you can have more of a release where the hands stay kind of square as you're coming through. So a lot of it just depends on the face orientation and how you're bringing your hands through contact. So an example would be like Jordan Spieth would be a good example. Jordan Spieth, doesn't really roll his hands over through contact, right? He's here, right? So typically when you look at most tour players, or I shouldn't say most tour players, if you look at pretty much any pro, anybody who's a very, very good ball striker, at this club last parallel position in the downswing, you're going to see that club face angled down some amount toward the ground. Now, some players are only angled down a slight amount like that. Some players are angled down a lot like that, right? So that would be like a 45-degree angle down. This would be like 5 degrees angle down. I've looked at, uh, you know, videos from lots and lots and lots of pros, and I've never ever seen this club face pointing up to the sky in any amount at that club parallel position. I do see a lot of students that come to me. I see a lot of recreational golfers with the club face there. So that's definitely something that you would want to address if that is, in an area where you're at, because your hands are in your wrists are going to have to make up for that through contact to get the club face closed, right? And that's usually going to lead to an early release, right? So if I have this club face like this, I'm going to tend to early stall my body and early release it to square it up. Whereas if I have the club face angled down a little bit, well, now if I were to do that same thing, well, that club face would just be too close. So now this enables me to keep turning through the shot and not have to release the club too early to square it up. So that'd be one place that I would look at. So club face there. And again, as I talked about earlier, ways to get the club face more closed would be the wrist angles, right? So if you're coming down and your wrist is super cupped right here, right, that could be part of it. And you can move it toward bowing. You don't have to bow it. You just have to move it toward bowing, right? Away from cupped is basically what you want to look at. And then the other option is to strengthen the grip, because there are players that have cupped wrists. So like a Matthew Fitzpatrick, for example, he has a very strong grip, but throughout the swing, he has a pretty cupped lead wrist. But that accommodates, that matches up with his grip, right? So strong grip, you can have a little bit of a cupped wrist. Now, obviously, you can overdo that a little bit and get the face too open, but that'd be an area where you'd want to go. So like I said, there's going to be some players that are here and will kind of hold that face. They don't really roll the hands over. They may turn over a little bit. They kind of hold that face as they're coming through. So like I said, players like that would be like a Jordan Spieth, right? A player that kind of rolls the hands through contact would be like a Tiger and Rory, right? They have that club face in a very similar position, but they're rolling their hands through contact. So when they finish, right, when this club gets to parallel to the ground in the follow through, that club face is typically going to be more like that, right? For a Tiger or a Rory, that'd be more like a roll, letting the hands kind of roll through. And then for a Jordan Spieth, right, his club face is going to be more like that, where the club face is pointing up a little bit instead of there, right? So there's two ways you can really do it. You can kind of have where you're rolling your wrists a little bit, right? So the hands are doing this, or it can be a slight amount of roll. There's just going to be less roll as you're coming through contact. It's really it's really up to you. I would venture to say most players are going to benefit more from having a more rolled release. What I would say is, if you're a player that tends to leave the club face open, you struggle with slices, right? You struggle with leaving the club face open, then I would tend to go more toward a rolled release, where you're feeling the hands kind of roll, the arms kind of rolling over. Now, keep in mind that we don't want this kind of rolled release, right? We want the forearms are rolling as we're coming through, but we're keeping our wrist angles in a good position. So the rolling, basically, if you want to see like a good model for this, Tiger is an awesome model for this, right? So that would be kind of, and Tiger looks like this. He's here, right? He's coming down. His lead wrist is pretty flat. His hands are kind of rolling over. The club face kind of naturally rolls over as he comes through, right? Tiger is more of kind of like a draw biased, typically kind of player, right? Now, if you're someone who tends to leave the club face too closed, then you may want to feel more of a square release, right? There's not really much rolling as you're coming through. So you're here and there, right? So an example of this would be like a Jordan Spieth, right? So those would be kind of two examples that I'd be looking at. All right, let's keep going. So Carrie says, how can I get a lower ball flight trajectory on approach shots with wedges in the 40 to 110 yard range? Shaft lean. That's really going to be the best way to do it is with more shaft lean. So if you're hitting those shots really high, you probably have an early release, right? You're coming in and you're kind of releasing this club early, right? So I would recommend working on getting more shaft lean at contact, getting the hands to be more in front. A good drill to kind of get you started with that would be like a stick drill. So the stick drill, you take an alignment stick. You can get these alignment sticks at any home improvement store, Lowe's, Menards, Home Depot, any of those places. They're usually just a couple bucks. I believe I got this one at Home Depot. It was in the section where you buy the garage sale signs and stuff like that. So you put it down the shaft like this, and then I would start out with some short and slow swings, right? And just kind of start with some short and slow swings. And what I actually like to do is I like to have players kind of start from that last parallel position in the downswing and come into impact with the hands. So start here where the hands are in front of the trail thigh, club parallel, and just learn to kind of turn through and not allow the stick to touch you, right? If you're hitting those shots really high with your wedges, right, then you're most likely scooping. And if you do that, this stick's going to hit you, right? So if we get here and then we can come through and not let this stick touch, right? Start out just like brushing the ground, then work toward hitting the ground in the right spot, then work toward adding the golf ball. Again, going nice and slow with it. Not the goal of this is not to crush golf balls. The goal is to get the movement to understand how our body needs to work. Because what's happening is that you're using your wrists and your arms throwing in front of your body to get the club to the golf ball, right? And what this is going to train you to do is really the opposite, is to use your body and less of your wrists and your arms to get the club to the golf ball, right? So a lot of times when we try to crush the ball, we try to go fast. What will happen is you'll go back to your old, habits, which you know how to do, right? So we have to go out slow at first. So that's what I would start with. Start with slow swings, then work toward faster and longer swings. But the stick drill is a good one to kind of get you started with that. All right, let's keep going. So Paul C says, on the takeaway at the first parallel position, what are the differences between club head in line with your hands and club head outside your hands? Guess I'm not sure what you mean. The differences as far as what goes. So I'm not a huge advocate of really people focusing so much on their takeaway because there's lots of different takeaways. The ball doesn't care what your takeaway does, right? It only cares how the club's working down to the ball. So as far as how you bring it back in whatever way allows you to bring it down in the correct spot. So I would really focus a lot more on the downswing, on what's happening in the downswing. Now, if your takeaway helps you to improve what you do in your downswing, then that's another thing. But that's not always what I see. Now, typically when I see the takeaway harming that, it's typically when we see the hands and the club go way inside, and then the hands and the club go way outside in the downswing. If you're doing that, then yeah, I would try to focus on more of the club kind of going outside the hands like here. So that way the momentum of the club can be kind of working more behind you. But there are players that bring the club inside and play really well. Sam Snead, Raymond Floyd, J.B. Holmes. There are plenty of players that bring the club inside and then also bring it down in a great spot in the downswing. So, what we have to understand, whenever you work on your takeaway, it has to be to improve what's happening with your ball flight and contact. I find that a big mistake people make is that they work on the takeaway because that's what starts the swing, right? So they feel like, well, I need to work on my takeaway to get things started correctly. But the problem with that is that you don't know what it's really improving. It's not necessarily, you may be getting your swing to look a certain way if you stick to it and you really work on it, which again, most people really don't. because it's a lot of reason why people don't really stick with it is because they're not seeing good results from it because it's not really changing anything, right? So that's what we have to do. So typically, if the club head is going outside the hands, a lot of times that gets the momentum of the club kind of working back behind you to shallow it. But it doesn't mean that it necessarily will, right? I see people that bring the club outside the hands and still come over the top, right? So focus on the downswing. Focus on the downswing. Focus on what's happening in the downswing, how the club's coming down to the ball. That's really the most important thing. However you bring the club up to get the good downswing, it really doesn't matter. It only matters how the club's coming down. So really focus on that. But typically, club head outside the hands in line with the hands helps to get the momentum of the club working in that direction. So if you find that you're bringing the club way inside, right, and then the momentum of the club is working this way, right, then it could be good to work on getting that, but with the goal of getting the momentum to be working in the other way, right? So the goal wouldn't be just to get the club head working outside the hands and then you just do the same thing in the downswing. The club head, the goal would be to get the club head working outside the hands, but to get the momentum working back behind you so that way the club can shallow out in the start of the downswing. All right, let's keep going. So Rick C says, what is your opinion on the LAB putters equal mallet Mez 1 and new Blade 1 link? Will the zero torque technology really help improve putting for mid and high handicap? To be honest with you, I'm really not familiar with those putters. I don't know anything about their zero torque technology. I assume they're talking about high MOI, which it can certainly help with your putting to have a high MOI putter. But there's lots of high MOI putters out there. So there's definitely lots of options to choose from. I would imagine that. Oh, I know. I think I know what they're like the goofy looking ones. Yeah, so I think it could definitely help, but there is a matter of because when it comes down to putting, like you have to be able to make a good stroke with it and things like that. And I have just found with a putter that's that bulky, it's a little bit like I played around with those a little bit. Now I'm not familiar with the specific ones that you're talking about, the Mallet Mez and the Blade Link 1. Like I said, I'm not really like a big club junkie or anything like that. But I do think high MOI putters can definitely help. So what exactly is MOI? MOI is moment of inertia, which basically means resistance to twisting. So when you hit a putt and you hit it slightly off the toe or slightly off the heel, a couple things are going to happen. One, the face will twist a little bit and the ball will start offline, right? Which is important, right? We want to start the ball on the line that we're intending. The other thing that will happen is it will transfer less energy to the ball, which again, that's a speed thing. So putting comes down to line and speed. That's really what it comes down to, hitting on the right line at the right speed. And if you hit off center strike, right, then your line and speed are going to be off, right? And you're probably going to make less putts. So a high MOI putter can certainly help. I have a high MOI putter myself. I use the TaylorMade Spider putter. To me, that's what works best for me. It's a very high MOI putter. It for alignment, it works really well for me. It suits my eye, and that's really what you have to find. You have to find something that suits your eye. You have to find something that you see straight with. You have to find something, and I do recommend generally, a high MOI putter for most people. Like I have this old bullseye putter, right? This is a very low MOI putter. If you don't hit this dead in the center, it's not going to go where you want it to go, right? Whereas this putter here, this is a Bettinardi putter, This is a very high MOI putter. So typically, high MOI putters, what you're going to see is they're going to have weights that are on the perimeter. They're going to have more weight on the perimeter, and typically, um, you know, generally just more weight in the perimeter of the putter. That's what's going to allow it not to twist as much when you hit it. Bettinardi makes great putters as well. You know, I played this for a while. It just started. You know, basically it's the whatever's going on in here, it just started getting loose. So I just ended up getting a new one. But but yeah, that's those are all great putters. Most of the modern putters are going to have you know some technology in it, like even like the ping answer putters. They're not as high MOI putter as you can get, but they are generally going to help with that because they have the perimeter weighting. Uh, but like a lab putter that's huge, that's going to be a very high MOI putter. But there also comes with when you that's kind of the downside of high MOI putters is the bulkiness of it. And to me, for me personally, I'm not a big fan of the lab putters because they're so bulky. They don't suit my eye very well. Alignment wise, it doesn't help me. Um, so I think the TaylorMade Spider for me is like the bulkiest putter that I would use that has the alignment and the feel and everything that I like. But you have to find what works best for you. If you truly want to find what putter works best for you, you really have to get professionally fitted. I highly recommend that you do. Go get professionally fitted so that way you can find what works best for you because they're gonna test. Okay, what suits your eye? What do you need as far as do you even need a high MOI putter? If you're someone who's um, you know not missing the center of the face of the putter very often, you really don't need a high MOI putter, right? Um, that's why you don't really see a lot of pros use them because they're not missing the center of the face very much. So so if that's not something that you're struggling with, then you may not even need that. But hey, if it suits your eye, you really like the look of it, you like the alignment of it, you make a great stroke with it, you see straight with it, all that stuff, then it can be a great putter for you. But the only way to really know that is to get professionally fitted. So WWCA says, as a senior golfer, is the 10-finger grip an advantage? It could be. So generally, what I recommend for a 10-finger grip for people is that maybe they have a strength issue because as we get older, we lose a little bit of strength. Sometimes we get arthritis in our hands and we can't grip things as tightly as we'd want to, and the 10-finger grip can help with that. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what a 10-finger grip is, it's similar to a baseball grip, but we're putting our thumbs down the shaft, right? So instead of an interlock or an overlap Varden grip, right? You're basically just, having all of your fingers on the grip, right? And that allows you to put a little bit more force into the handle. Now, if you're someone who has the strength to be able to, put enough force into the club, then I recommend interlock or an overlap grip. The reason being is that it allows your hands to work better in unison. So it can certainly help if you're having struggles. So that's why generally juniors, you will typically have a 10-finger grip until they develop the strength to not need one. There's some women use it because women usually don't have as much strength as men. Some men that are lacking some strength from via just getting older and losing strength or arthritis or things like that, it could benefit. So it's certainly something you can try to see if it can help you. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the 10-finger grip. So Rick C says, do you think the graphite putter shafts are worth the investment, such as BGT, LA Golf, and Acra shafts? To be honest with you, I really don't know. Again, I'm not like a club junkie guy. I don't keep up with all the shafts and all that stuff. It's really, I would imagine it's just something you just got to get fitted for and see what works best for you. There's been lots of great putters. Well, I will say this: there's been lots and lots and lots of great putters over the course of history that didn't use graphite shafts in their putters. They only used steel shafts, right? Or even sometimes some, want to go back far enough, wooden shafts, right? Um, so I would say most likely, my gut is most likely no, but I've never tried a graphite shaft in a putter. I don't know that it's really necessary to have a graphite shaft in a putter. Um, the advantage of a graphite shaft is that it can be very light, right? I don't really need my putter shaft to be really light. I like to feel some heaviness, a little bit of weight with the putter. So uh, I don't know what the advantage is of a graphite shaft with a putter, to be honest. Um, Now I know they're starting to put graphite shafts uh, in place of things more often because they're more durable and because the manufacturing processes have gotten better. So they're more durable, they're more precise, whereas they used to not be very precise. Tiger played steel shafts in his driver for a long time because the graphite shafts just weren't very consistent, and they've become more and more consistent with the manufacturing processes. Um, so you know, to me, I don't understand why you'd need a graphite shaft in a putter, but again, I don't really have a full understanding. My expertise is more in the golf swing. So if you have questions about golf clubs, unfortunately, I'm probably not going to be the best guy to ask. I have obviously some understanding about golf clubs and things like that, but it's not really my area of expertise. So I apologize that I may not be able to help you the best in that, but if you're looking at getting better via your golf swing, I can certainly help you. So what is your opinion about the Ping chipper iron? It's a 9 iron with 35-inch putter length shaft. Yeah, I like it. I think it certainly makes things a lot easier. Um, there's been several clubs that have come out like that, but basically, if you're someone who really struggles with your chipping, around the greens, and stuff like that, it's just a club that makes it a little bit easier because typically, so if you think about like a 9 iron, if you're hitting like a bump and run shot with your 9 iron, well, your 9 iron is a longer club. It's also it's a flatter club, right? So you have to stand farther away from it. So basically, you'd have to kind of stand like this and actually have the toe down on the ground, right? It's also lighter, right? The club is lighter, and the sole of the club is not going to be as thick, right? So all those things with the chipper club has a thicker sole on it, which helps it kind of get through the grass a little bit better, helps it glide through the turf a little bit better. It's heavier, which helps it glide through the turf and gives you a little bit more feel. It's more upright, so that way you can stand closer to it, pretty much like you would with a putt, right? And then it's also going to allow it to stay flush with the ground when you do that. So I think it's a great club if you're someone who struggles with your chipping. If you're someone who chips great with your 9 iron, then you really don't need it because you're already doing fine. But if you're someone who really struggles with bump and run shots, it can certainly help. All right, keep the questions coming here. We got about 30 minutes or so left. So WWCA says earlier you mentioned if we struggle with slice tendency or fade tendency, we should lean toward a forearm release roll. Tiger, as example, could you review that thought? Yeah. So if you struggle with leaving the face open, then you should let the arms turn over through contact, right? So here I'm letting my arms when I'm here, basically my trail arm has got on top of my lead arm as I'm coming through. So I'm feeling this club face kind of rolling through. If you're someone who struggles with the club face getting too close, you may benefit more from kind of like a hold off release. This would be like what Jordan Spieth does, where when he releases it, his trail hands kind of more underneath the club still, right? So this would be rolled versus hold off, right? So you're letting that club face naturally kind of turn over. It's really something that basically to do a hold off release, you basically need to have trained that. That's not really a natural thing. It's typically something that you have to train into your swing. So there are players that have trained that into your swing, like a Jordan Spieth. So um, so you probably already have more of a rolled release. You're probably just still leaving the face open because you either have a weak grip or you have poor wrist angles as you're coming into contact. So a weak grip would be this. This is the most often reason why I see people leave the face open is from a weak grip. That's really the number one reason that I see. So a weak grip would be basically where the back of my lead hand is pointing straight toward the target, right? It is on the side of the grip. And the reason, in my opinion, the reason why a lot of people have a weak grip is because it's really the most comfortable grip to have, right? If I want to hold this club straight in front of me, the most comfortable way to hold it would be to have a weak grip, right? So this would be a weak grip, right? So see how the back of my lead hand is pointing toward the target, the palm of my trail hand is pointing toward the target. So if I hold it like this, right? When I come into contact, I'm going to tend to have that club face open. I'm going to tend to early release it to square it up, right? Now there are pros that have weak grips but have great impact positions, and that's because they bow their lead wrist a lot. So Colin Morikawa would be a good example. If you look at Colin Morikawa, weak grip, when he comes into impact, his lead wrist is very cupped. He's like this, right? That's just not a natural thing for most recreational golfers to do. So that's why I recommend a stronger grip for most golfers, where the lead hand is turned more on the grip. It's a little bit more on top or a lot more on top, because that helps get the club face closed much more easily. So Rick C says, what is the best method of practice chipping at home, indoors, and on the lawn? Use real golf balls or foam ones, target net, mat types, best drills. So there's lots of drills in the chipping mastery course. I would use real golf balls, and the more you can make it like the actual golf course, the better off you're going to be, right? The best method of practicing your chipping would be to do it on a real practice chipping green, right? But if you want to do it at home, you need to make it as much like as much like that as you possibly can. Now, obviously, I don't expect you to put a practice chipping green in your backyard, but if you can hit real golf balls, I would focus on hitting different spots, right? So Clay talks about the jump rope drill in the chipping mastery course. So that's basically, or you can use alignment sticks. So what you can do is you can put alignment sticks on the ground, space them about 3 feet apart, and practice chipping and landing the ball, short of that stick, a little bit long of that stick, short of that stick, long of that stick. Practice hitting your landing spots, because that's really what getting good at chipping is about, hitting your landing spots. So now, obviously, if you're not on a real green, you're not going to be able to practice where your landing spot needs to be, right? That's something you're going to have to do, because you can only do so much from home. But obviously, if your only option is to practice at home, then this is the best thing that you can do. When you go play, that's just going to have to be your practice for knowing where to land it. But practicing your landing spots would definitely be something that I would recommend doing. So you can just have this on your lawn or whatever. Now, obviously, the ball is not going to react on your lawn like it would on a green, but you can practice hitting the ground in different spots. And you can use a little mat, a piece of carpet. You can hit off of your grass if you want. I don't really recommend that unless you want to have, divots and stuff in your grass. But if you use like a little mat or a little rug or something like that and kind of chip off of it and practice hitting different spots on the ground, that'd really be the best way to work on stuff. But if you go to the chipping mastery course, lots and lots of drills in there. To get to the chipping mastery course, you can click the house icon at the top of the page. That will take you to the home page, and on the home page, you can scroll down and you'll see a list of all the courses there. You can select the chipping mastery course, tons and tons of drills in there. I would just try to adapt them to your home, just like I kind of did there with the jump up room one as an example. All right, so let's keep the questions coming here. If you're just hopping on here, I'm just waiting for a question to be asked. So if we got any more questions, keep them coming. So Rick C says, I typically play early in the morning when there is a lot of moisture on the greens. How does this impact the putting technique and reading the putts? It just makes the greens a little bit slower. That's about it. Yeah, so you're just gonna have to hit the ball a little bit higher once the dew subsides, and evaporates off. The greens will get a little bit faster. But yeah, if you're playing with dew on the greens, you just got to hit a little bit harder than what you think typically. That's really it. All right, so Jerry D says, working through the TSU system and I'm having success with a stronger grip, but I seem to be more effective putting with a weak grip. Any reason to change the putting grip to a strong grip? No, you can keep generally you know, with a putter, you're going to have a weak grip. So you don't need to change it for your putting. It's mainly just for your full swing shots. So yeah, I would just keep the same grip for your putter. So Jerry G says another putting grip question. Excuse me. Does hold it like a baby bird apply to putting as well? Yeah, we don't want to really have a gorilla grip on the putter. So what I would say is with the putting grip, you really just want to hold on to it tightly enough to where you can control it, but lightly enough to where the putter's not falling out of your hands, right? So if you're holding on to it so lightly that it's falling out of your hands, or you're holding on to it so lightly that it's moving around in your hands, right? We don't want that. So you want to be able to hold on to it tightly enough to where you can control it, but not so tightly that you can't feel the club head. The key here is we want to be able to feel the weight of the putter head, right? So That's kind of what you want to feel as far as the grip pressure. It's going to be pretty light with a putter. If you're just hop on here, I'm just waiting for a question to be asked. Also, want to mention I do have spots open for my online lessons. So if you're interested, you can click the link above the video. I did open up some spots today. So if you'd like to do some work on your swing or stuff like that, you can sign up at the link. If you have any questions about online lessons, I'll be happy to answer them as well. All right, we got about 10 minutes left here. If anybody's got any more questions. All right, we got about 5 minutes or so left. If anybody has any last minute questions, I'm going to jump off here right at noon. So, if you have any last minute questions, feel free to ask. All right. So, as I mentioned before, I do have some spots available for my online lessons. I'm going to post a in the chat here. This is a before and after video that we released today. So if you want to check that out, and see, you know, what the online lessons can do for you. You're welcome to check it out. We'll be sending out an email for it later, but if you want to check out the video now, you can certainly check it out. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Thanks everybody for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to y'all next time.